She was just a janitor, a ghost in the halls of a great university, silently sweeping floors while students chased the very dreams she was forced to give up. But one night, an unsolved problem left on a whiteboard, a puzzle that stumped the world's greatest minds, would change everything. What she did next shocked professors, students, and even a world-renowned scientist. This is the unbelievable story of how a forgotten genius got her second chance. Her name was Naomi. At just 19, she carried a weariness that didn't match her age. Life in her small village of Umuzi was simple, and for most, it was enough. But Naomi was different. She had a quiet, burning hunger for more. Her father, Mr. Aid, had once been a respected teacher, known to every child as Master Aid. He taught with passion, even when the world forgot to reward him. When government promises faded and his pension went unpaid, his comfort disappeared, but his love for teaching remained. Their small mud-walled home was filled with old books and a cracked chalkboard. To anyone else, it looked like clutter. To Naomi, it was a library, a treasure trove of knowledge. Every single evening, her father would light a kerosene lantern and call her for their lessons. "Naomi," he would say gently, "are you ready to learn today?" And no matter how exhausted she was from the day's chores, she always answered, "Yes, Papa." Under that dim, flickering light, he taught her everything: algebra, geometry, physics, logic. Her mind was like a sponge, absorbing knowledge with an incredible speed. "You have a gift," he often told her, his voice full of pride. "A mind that sees patterns where others only see confusion." Those words became the spark that kept her dream of a bigger world alive, a flame she protected against the harsh winds of reality. When Naomi finished secondary school with the highest marks in her district, her name was announced on the local radio. She had been accepted into the state university. The joy was overwhelming, but it was tragically short-lived. Her father read the acceptance letter with trembling hands, his eyes shining with both pride and heartbreak. "My daughter," he whispered, his voice cracking, "you have achieved greatness, but I cannot send you. Not yet. The pension I am owed would have covered your fees, but it has not come." Naomi knelt beside him, placing her head on his lap. "Papa, it's all right," she whispered, fighting back her own tears. "You gave me knowledge. That is enough." He shook his head sadly. "Knowledge is a seed, my child, but opportunity is the rain." That night, Naomi cried silently, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. She imagined the lecture halls, the libraries, the students with their books. She saw herself among them, a vivid dream that reality had just shattered. But even then, she refused to let go of hope. Months later, with her father's blessing, Naomi left the village for the city, determined to find work. "Go," he said softly, placing his old worn wristwatch in her hand. "Even if you cannot study yet, go near the light. Stay close to knowledge." The bus ride was long and dusty. All she carried was a small bag containing 2 dresses, the watch, her Bible, and notebooks filled with years of her father's lessons. When she arrived, the state university looked like a palace. Its white buildings, sparkling fountains, and manicured lawns seemed like something from a fairy tale. And there, at the main gate, a simple notice caught her eye: "Vacancy janitorial staff needed." It wasn't the path she had dreamed of, but it was close to learning, and for now, that was enough. She was hired the very next day. Naomi's new world was a stark contrast to the academic life she envisioned. She woke before sunrise, sweeping classrooms, scrubbing floors, and emptying bins. She was a ghost, invisible to the students who rushed past her, their minds full of theories and futures she could only dream of. But every time she wiped down a chalkboard, her eyes would linger on the equations. Sometimes she recognized them. Sometimes she whispered them to herself. And sometimes she would solve the ones she remembered from her father's lessons, just for a moment, before wiping them away. During her short breaks, She would gather old notes that students had thrown away. She'd read them under a large mango tree while the other cleaners rested and chatted. At night, back in her tiny, shared room, she used the faint light of a small candle to continue studying, poring over the discarded treasures she had collected. She wasn't officially enrolled, but in her own quiet way, the university had become her school. One day, an electric buzz of excitement swept across the campus. A world-renowned physicist, the brilliant Dr. Raymond from Oxford University, was visiting. His research was legendary, and his visit was a monumental event. Students prepared for weeks, classrooms were polished to a shine, and reporters were invited. Amidst all the frenzy, Naomi quietly swept the auditorium floor, listening to conversations about quantum mechanics and theoretical physics that she barely understood but yearned to. Dr. Raymond arrived with a calm, magnetic authority. When he spoke, the entire hall fell silent, hanging on his every word. "Science," he said, his voice resonating through the auditorium, "is not about memorizing facts. It is about imagination, creativity, vision." Naomi felt her heart beat faster. Then, he turned to the massive whiteboard and wrote an enormous, complex equation, a chaotic web of symbols and lines. "This," he announced, "is an adaptation of an unsolved problem in theoretical physics. No student has ever solved it. If anyone here can, the world will never forget your name." Cameras flashed, and students gasped at the challenge. He left the equation on the board, a silent dare to every brilliant mind on campus. For days, students tried. For nights, they debated in study groups, but the board remained unchanged. The problem was, as everyone suspected, impossible. One quiet night, long after the campus had fallen asleep, Naomi entered Hall 7 to begin her cleaning duties. Moonlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the room in a silvery glow. And there it was, the unsolved problem, still shining on the whiteboard. She paused, her broom forgotten in her hand. Something about the symbols felt familiar. Not the exact problem, but the rhythm, the pattern. It reminded her of the way her father taught her to think, to see the hidden connections. She looked around. The hall was empty, wrapped in a profound silence. With a trembling hand, she picked up a piece of chalk. At first, her hand shook, but then her mind took over. Numbers flowed, ideas connected, and logic fell into place. The world outside faded away. It was just her, the board, and the puzzle. She erased, rewrote, stepped back to see the bigger picture, then leaned in to refine the details. Hours passed like minutes. Finally, she reached the last line. She gasped. It all made sense. She had solved it. Her heart pounded in her chest as she checked it again and again. It was perfect. She whispered to the empty hall, "I did it." Then, just as quietly as she had started, she resumed her cleaning and left the solved equation untouched. The next morning, the first students who rushed into Hall 7 for class froze in their tracks. The impossible problem was solved. Word spread like wildfire. Professors ran to see it. The dean was called. Dr. Raymond himself hurried to the hall. He studied every line of the solution, his eyes widening with disbelief and admiration. "This is correct," he whispered, astounded. "It's perfect, brilliant." A mystery solver had emerged from the shadows. The dean immediately ordered security to check the CCTV footage from the previous night. Everyone gathered in the control room, their eyes glued to the flickering black and white screen. They watched as the footage showed an empty hall, and then they saw her. A lone janitor, in a faded blue uniform, standing before the whiteboard, chalk in hand, solving the impossible. The room fell silent. Dr. Raymond, his voice barely a whisper, asked, "Who is that girl?" Naomi was summoned to the administrative office. She walked in trembling, convinced she was about to be fired for touching the board. The dean looked at her sternly and asked, Naomi, did you solve the equation? Tears welled up in her eyes. I'm so sorry, sir, she cried. I didn't mean any harm. Please don't fire me. Dr. Raymond stood up slowly, a gentle smile on his face. Fire you, my dear? You solved a problem the world could not. Your work is not just correct. It's brilliant. Naomi stared at him, utterly shocked. Where did you learn this? He asked softly. My father taught me, she explained. He was a teacher. I couldn't go to school. We couldn't afford it. Dr. Raymond's smile widened. You have a rare gift, Naomi, a gift that deserves the world. He then turned to the dean and declared, I will personally sponsor her education, a full scholarship, starting immediately. Naomi covered her face and sobbed with relief and joy. Sir, thank you, thank you. By morning, everyone on campus knew her name. They called her the janitor genius. The students who once ignored her now looked at her with awe. Professors praised her insight. She was given new clothes, new books, and a spot in the freshman physics class. As she walked into her first lecture hall as a student, not a cleaner, her hands trembled as she held a brand new notebook. The entire class fell silent. Whispers filled the room. That's her. That's the girl who solved it. For the first time in her life, Naomi felt like she truly belonged. A few days later, Dr. Raymond arranged for a university car to bring her father from the village. When Mr. Aide arrived, he looked overwhelmed by the grand campus. Naomi ran to him, hugging him tightly. Papa, she said, her voice thick with emotion. They know everything you taught me. Tears streamed down the old man's face. I told you, he whispered, his voice trembling with pride. I told you one day the world would see what I see. In front of students, faculty, and news cameras, Dr. Raymond approached the old village teacher and bowed respectfully. Sir, he said, you raised a brilliant mind. The world owes you a debt of gratitude. The crowd erupted in applause. Mr. Aide's dream, the one he had nurtured for his daughter under a dim kerosene lamp, had finally come true. Naomi thrived in her studies, becoming known not just for her incredible intelligence, but for her humility and kindness. She joined research groups and explored scientific ideas she had only ever dreamed of. The janitor who once swept classrooms had become one of the brightest stars on campus. Naomi's story teaches us a powerful lesson. Genius has no uniform, talent has no social class, and dreams don't expire just because of poverty. Sometimes, all a brilliant mind needs is one chance, one open door, one moment for their light to shine. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that anything is possible.